Welcome to the Awesemo Fantasy Football Hour. I'm Nolan Kelly here with Adam Pfeifer. We're going to be breaking down the NFL draft. It happened. It's over. It felt like Christmas. This is kind of like January 2nd, and now all the news is over. But we have a lot to analyze, a lot of new moving pieces and parts. And fantasy football drafts and best ball drafts are not too far away. So, Adam, what's going on, man?
Nolan, it's good to talk to you. Yeah, I mean, the draft was awesome for those 3 days, and I was doing the live draft blog over at awesemo.com, and everybody was kind of like connected on Twitter, and it was fun, kind of like the Jordan documentary. That's why it's been fun. And then once it's over, it's like, okay, back to this just weird world. But yeah, I mean, this was a crazy NFL draft in terms of skill players. I mean, you had like 20 plus receivers taken. The running backs obviously impactful. So it is. I was excited for it to end just because I wanted to see where I'd rank these guys, and you can actually go find. I've released my initial rankings over at awesemo.com on Monday, so you can check that out. But yeah, it was really fun, and now I'm just praying that we have an NFL season, which I just still believe we will.
Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. All right, well, let's get right into it. Yes, of course, you can go check out all of Adam's rankings and his draft analysis up on Osmo.com. Some of the best analysis you will find out there. And of course, Adam writes a weekly article during NFL season that is the most comprehensive weekly DFS and fantasy football breakdown you can find anywhere in the industry today. So look forward to that if we get a season together. Let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs, 12-4 last season. Shocked a few people. Maybe buried the lead there, Adam. They also won the Super Bowl. Maybe shocked a few people by taking a running back at 32 overall, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. What do you think of that pick? Where are you slotting him in? What does this do to the Chiefs' offense?
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool story when you saw after they picked him. Apparently, the Chiefs started called Patrick Mahomes, and they were like, "Yeah, like pick. Don't even think. Just pick somebody that you want." And he said Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they took him. So yeah, I mean, anytime you invest a first-round pick in a running back, that type of draft capital, you expect, I don't think he's going to come in, especially at 5'7", to be this 20-touch back. But, I mean, he is clearly the best pass-catching back in this class. He's going to fit perfectly with Patrick Mahomes. Really good route runner. This offense is going to have red zone opportunities. And this guy is just really dangerous. I mean, Andy Reid said he reminded them of Brian Westbrook, but said he's better than Brian Westbrook. And we know how valuable Westbrook was in fantasy. So, yeah, I mean, he's clearly a top 20 back at the minimum. And I've seen people putting him, well higher than that. So, yeah, I mean, Graham Barfield, he does a lot of the yards created stuff with running backs. He also pointed out that he lined up out wide like 26% of the time at LSU. So he's just really versatile. I think he's going to be somebody, especially in PPR leagues, that I'd be shocked if he played, as long as he didn't get hurt, if he caught less than 60 balls this year.
That's a shockingly high number. He's going to be used in this offense. I think there's no doubt about that. I think the passing game work, I think you're bang on there. It's like that's the reason that they took him, right? He can just fit into this offense seamlessly and just gives Mahomes another weapon. It's going to be quite something to watch there, as long as they don't become a more run-reliant team. Are you at all worried about that?
No, not even a little bit. Like you'll see, I remember watching so many Chiefs games where like they would either call a run or it'd be like 4th and 1 from like right around midfield, and Patrick Mahomes would be like pleading and begging. So I think Patrick Mahomes, like this is his team. I know Andy Reid's, obviously the head coach and everything, and he's going to have his say, but like Patrick Mahomes is going to have, this offense firmly in his hands. So I don't think they're going to be like, I don't know, last year's version of, like Miami. Well, also Miami, that's a bad example because Miami was always playing from behind. But, like, they're not going to be like the Lions or anything where they're just passing 60% of the time. But they're going to be probably, middle of the pack. But, again, when you're playing with Patrick Mahomes, you don't need, 50 pass attempts a game because he's so damn efficient and so good. So I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is somebody that's probably the 101 in rookie drafts. You can make the case for Jonathan Taylor, who we'll talk about, but in redraft, he'll probably come off the board. It might even that's the other thing with these rookies, because we have this whole coronavirus situation where you're not going to we may not get a lot of training camps, and preseason might be cut short or eliminated entirely. So that's going to hurt, but still, first round pick. I know it was the last pick of the first round, but that tells me something and how they want to use this guy.
All right, let's move it on here to the Denver Broncos. Finished second in the AFC West, 7-9 last year. I think had probably my favorite draft out of any team. There are so many pieces to talk about. I should say that we moved on from the Chiefs there because they didn't really do anything with the rest of their picks in terms of adding to their offense. It was just a one add there. So we're going to be going through these AFC teams one by one, and then we will finish up with the NFC next podcast. So back to the Broncos here. Jerry Jeudy, of course, taking with their first pick in the first round, 15th overall. KJ Hamler at Penn State, who runs like a 4.3 40 or something, 4.35, super fast gadget player, just had problems catching the ball. He's electric. Improved their offensive line a lot, which was one of the underrated stories of this draft for the Broncos. Lloyd Cushenberry out of LSU, starting center. I'm going to butcher this name, but Natane Moody from PFF. He had a really high grade for PFF, offensive guard. Tyree Cleveland as well, and then Albert O, the like physical freak tight end out of Missouri, who's raw and could catch some balls in two tight end sets, maybe, assuming Noah Fant takes a break once in a while. What did you think of this draft, and like, what are you doing with all these guys?
Yeah, like this is the draft that, like, if you have a young quarterback that you either think or hope is your franchise guy, this is what you do the following year, right? Like, it kind of reminds me what the Bills did with Josh Allen last offseason. They brought in 6 offensive linemen. They added John Brown and Cole Beasley. They added Devin. Like, you just surround them with pieces, and that's what the Broncos are doing with Drew Lock. You draft Jerry Jeudy, who's maybe the most complete receiver in the draft. Then you also add KJ Hamler, who you mentioned is a massive speed freak, and he played in the slot a ton. He pretty much was exclusively a slot guy at Penn State, and that's important because Emmanuel Sanders was kind of playing the slot before he got traded. Then they had Deshaun Hamilton there, and he didn't really pan out. So now you have Courtland Sutton, who's going to stay on the outside. He was in the slot like 7% of the time last year. He's an outside guy. Jeudy played in the slot 60% of the time at Alabama. His route running, he's going to play inside, but so is KJ Hamler. So that they all kind of fit really well. Sutton's not really a burner. KJ Hamler is, and then Judy's kind of like he's definitely not slow. He's not like KJ Hamler, Tyreek Hill type speed, but he's good enough in that aspect. So yeah, I think when you also add the fact that you have Noah Fant in his second year who showed a lot of promise, especially after the catch, and then you add Melvin Gordon, there's going to be a ton of viable pass catchers here. So I think it's interesting for these guys that were already on the team, like Sutton, where you might impact his stock a little bit because of the targets. But I do want to see it first with Drew Lock because he actually wasn't that good when he took over last year. And Sutton, actually, his numbers weren't great with Drew Lock. But, yeah, this offense, I mean, what do you have to do? Obviously, you have to have, some players on defense. But odds are you're going to have to keep up with Patrick Mahomes in the AFC West for the next 10 years. So they're just loading up on weapons on offense, trying to score points and keep it up in these games. I think that's the right way to go. Not to mention, yeah, you lost Chris Harris, but I'm going to get Bradley Chubb back on the defensive line next year too. So, yeah, Denver definitely had one of the more impressive drafts, I would say. As for fantasy, I think Judy's going to be like, if I remember correctly, he's like my wide receiver 45. So, like, nothing crazy, but he's definitely talented. I just think this is best, obviously, for Drew Lock. So if he doesn't get it done with this group of weapons, then I don't know, it might not happen for him.
That's the thing, right? He's the big question mark in all of this, but these weapons are insane, and they've certainly done enough to surround him. So you're going Jeudy 45. Where does he rank in your rookie rankings? Is he like a top first-round pick?
Yeah, I would say he's right there. Like the running backs are obviously a little bit higher, and I have some bolder takes with some of my rookie receivers, but like I really like Justin Jefferson this year. So I like in terms of just ranking the receivers of the rookie class for redraft, like I think Justin Jefferson's actually first. We'll talk about him in the NFC pod, but yeah, Jeudy would still be a first round pick in rookie drafts. And like, I wouldn't be shocked if he kind of at some point this year, as good as Courtland Sutton is, overtook him as the top target in this passing game, just because he's a little bit more versatile.
All right, and finally, KJ Hamler. Just your general thoughts. Do you think he's going to be fantasy viable at all? Is he just more of a like one off, maybe using the return game kind of thing? What are we doing with him?
He'll have his weeks. I just think they're gonna if you're gonna use. Because if he's going to play in the slot probably more than the other two, I would say, assuming he wins out and is the number 3 receiver on his team. So, like, with that kind of speed, he'll have some weeks. But with Noah Fant there and both running backs out of the backfield, Melvin Gordon's going to catch a lot of passes. And that's the thing. Like, they were they still have not been sold on Philip Lindsay as a pass catcher, despite how really solid he's been. So, like, they bring in Melvin Gordon, who's been really good as a pass catcher the last couple of years. I think he's somebody you're obviously not drafting in traditional redraft leagues, but, like, DFS tournaments, especially if he's returning kicks at some point. Yeah, he'll definitely have a role.
All right, moving on to the next team in the AFC West, the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, 7-9
when I
last year.
posted my rankings, I had to go back before I published them yesterday and delete Oakland for all the receivers, Josh Jacobs and Derek Carr. So.
Well, I'm going to be calling the LA Chargers the San Diego Chargers until I'm probably 50 years old. So, Las Vegas Raiders, another draft where they went wide receiver heavy. Henry Ruggs, the third as the first wide receiver off the board, which surprised a lot of people. We have Lynn Bowden Jr. out of Kentucky, who, if you've seen, go Google some highlights of him because they're crazy. There's this one play where he's like punting or something from the end zone. I don't know what was going on, and he basically deked out the entire team, scored a touchdown. Brian Edwards out of South Carolina, 3 wide receiver ads as well. Also, just side note, I kind of like their cornerback draft too. Damon Arnett out of Ohio State and Amik Robertson, who's one of PFF's top rated guys or most underrated prospect picks. But let's dig into these wide receivers. Your thoughts on Ruggs and whether or not Bowden and Edwards can make a dent as well in these offense in your rookie drafts, your dynasty drafts, in any kind of season-long formats.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the Ruggs pick, but I get it. I just think CeeDee Lamb is the best receiver in this class, and I think Judy's better too. But, obviously speed kills in the NFL today, and there's probably nobody faster to this class than Henry Ruggs. So, yeah, I mean, and we know the Oakland Raiders philosophy has been speed over the past years in drafts. So it would have been more shocking if it wasn't the Raiders, but then you're like, oh, okay, it's Oakland. Yeah, I think at first, like the first hour and a half, 2 hours of the draft, when Ruggs was the first receiver off the board, I was like, okay, Judy went to Denver. They have some guys. CeeDee Lamb went to Dallas. They obviously have some guys. So Ruggs could be potentially the top rookie receiver, but then they just kept adding guys. They added Brian Edwards, they added Bowden. They still have Waller. They still have Tyrell Williams. So I think Ruggs is going to be – I would have liked it more if they drafted Jerry Jeudy, because you look at their quarterbacks. I've talked about this all offseason. Derek Carr and Mariota are 2 of the least aggressive quarterbacks in the league. 11.7% of Derek Carr's pass attempts last year were into tight windows, second lowest rate in the league. They don't take chances. And you need Jeudy or somebody with that kind of separation of route running. I don't know if Henry Ruggs has that. He obviously has the speed, and they'll use him in screens and everything. So, I don't know. Ruggs, his speed is great, but he actually wasn't even used as a downfield threat as much as you would have thought last year at Alabama. I think he's the type of player that I probably won't look too much, just because I personally would rather have the safe catch guys, the guys that have a higher floor, but it's good for the offense. It gives them more speed. I think it helps stretch the safeties and spread the field and open it up for guys like Darren Waller underneath. So I think it's not bad for Waller and maybe even Hunter Renfrow, as long as he holds on to that slot job. But for Ruggs itself, I don't love the quarterback play. I don't love, I like the player. I don't love the player. I would have been way more excited because there's definitely targets available, right? I mean, Tyrell Williams didn't really pan out last year. He was hurt a lot, but he's not an alpha or anything. Waller is the main target in this passing game, but when the tight end's the main target of the passing game, that means you probably have a really good opportunity for targets at receiver. So Ruggs has potential. I just much rather have had them take Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb. I wanted those guys to go there and get 120 potential targets.
And I think what you said there is what a lot of people are saying is not my favorite guy, but I certainly get it. Speed kills in the NFL. Yeah, definitely some targets up for grabs. I would look for Hunter Renfrow possibly to emerge this year. He certainly flashed some signs last year, but as you said, the ADOT is a big problem from those quarterbacks on the Raiders, and unless they can scheme to get Ruggs the ball, that might be provide
if your
some
quarterback
issues.
is throwing the ball away on 4th down,
yeah, it's not great.
He's done it 5 times. It's unreal.
For sure. Maybe a longer-term play there, because the Raiders can go out and get a quarterback eventually. I'm not sure Carr is the answer there, but maybe they will down the road. So definitely viable in your first round of your rookie drafts here. Let's move on to the final team in the AFC West, the LA Chargers. I got it right. Two major, I think, storylines here. Well, obviously Justin Herbert, will he take over for Tyrod Taylor? And then I really liked their KJ Hill pick actually in the 7th round of Ohio State. He fell pretty far. And then we got Joe Reed as well in the 5th round. What are you doing? Oh, and of course Joshua Kelly running back in the 4th round from UCLA. What are you doing with Herbert, and what are you doing with any of these pieces that they've added? Are they viable? And then, of course, how does the addition of Herbert affect the offense for the Chargers? Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, these guys.
Yeah, so we've heard all offseason Anthony Lynn say Tyrod's not just like a bridge guy, like he's the starting quarterback. And like obviously people were like, oh, that was a lie because they took Herbert. They weren't not going to take Justin Herbert there. Like if you look at their team, the Chargers are always a joke because they choke in games and blow leads, but like there's probably not 10 teams with more talent in the NFL.
So talented.
So like you look at their team, they definitely didn't need cornerbacks. They don't need receiver help. They're not going to draft a running back there. Their D-line's good. They just hurt a lot. So like they weren't not going to take Justin Herbert when you just lost your franchise quarterback the last 15 years. So for me, and when am I a Tyrod lover? Yeah, I am. But also, Anthony Lynn was the offensive coordinator of Buffalo. Obviously, he's a big fan of Tyrod Taylor when they were working together when Tyrod was there those 3 years. I don't think this is smoke. I think Tyrod is going to start the season as a starting quarterback. And unless the Chargers just completely collapse and start like 2-6 or something, or 1-4 or 1-5, like I don't think Herbert's playing this year. Now people will say, yeah, it's the same thing as Baker in Cleveland when Tyrod started and Baker took over. If I'm not mistaken, Tyrod didn't play well by any means, so the change probably would have happened. But Tyrod had a concussion, and then Baker came in against the Jets on Thursday night. So I don't think Herbert's playing this year if the Chargers remain just somewhat competitive. But obviously, in Dynasty, like Keenan Allen's still relatively young, Mike Williams young, Hunter Henry young, like Austin Eckler young, Joshua Kelly. Like they have a ton of young talent. So Herbert is probably the strongest arm in the draft class. Really, 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 you wouldn't, if you could build a prototypical quarterback, you would build Justin Herbert, strong arm, 6'6", 236, like massive appeal, can run a little bit. And yeah, I think he'll benefit like a guy like Mike Williams, who had an 18.2 ADOT last year, one of the highest rates in the league. Herbert, strong arm. I think it's more of a dynasty thing. And if the Chargers, for whatever reason, do struggle to start the year, then you probably will see Herbert. But, yeah, I'm going into the season fully expecting Tyrod to start at quarterback. And then Joshua Kelly's probably going to compete with Justin Jackson for the backup duties. Austin Eckler's the clear lead back. I don't think he's going to see like 18, 19 carries a game, but overall touches with his probably the best receiving back in the NFL, not named Christian McCaffrey. So I think Eckler's a winner that they didn't have any picks in those middle rounds to take one of the running backs. So yeah, I'm expecting Tyrod to play until the Chargers just spontaneously combust like they seemingly always do.
Yeah, definitely is going to happen maybe later on the road or down the road during the season. So maybe you want to factor that in for your best ball lineups. You can probably draft Tyrod.
Don't sleep on Tyrod because people are just like, Tyrod, I'd rather have Herbert play. But like in his 3 years of Buffalo, he was a top 17 quarterback, which doesn't sound like a lot, but people are like ranking him like 25, 26. Like if he plays, he's still going to run. He's probably going to be like, in terms of points per game, at worst, like top 16, 17, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. KJ Hill, any thoughts on that? Do you like Joe Reed?
I thought the KJ Hill pick was a steal. I don't know if these guys are going to be relevant this year when you have all these guys in the offense, but I somebody to kind of look to in the future, maybe pairing him alongside Justin Herbert for the future. So
because Andre Patton is the third wide receiver right now, so I feel like there's a chance they get some action. But.
And like Keenan Allen's been healthy the last couple of years. I never thought he was injury prone. He had kind of like Carson Wentz, like fluke injuries, but like all it takes is one of those guys, whether it's Allen or Williams, to go down, and then you all of a sudden have they don't have a lot of depth back there. So.
Great points. All right, let's move it on to the AFC South. Jacksonville, let's start at the top. The Houston Texans, 10-6 last year, did not have very many picks. In fact, they just took one offensive player, but I do like him. Isaiah Coulter out of Rhode Island, kind of a sneaky pick. Any thoughts? I guess there's not really a lot to talk about there because there's not any chance that he's probably going to see the field unless some of these other receivers get taken, right?
Yeah, but you look at the receivers in front of them; they're not exactly models of health.
That's true.
Brandon Cooks, 5 concussions. Will Fuller, just probably the most injury-prone receiver in the NFL. Kenny Stills, I saw like they could even trade him, but yeah, nothing as of right now. I'm starting to think though, the entire industry is probably going to keep getting lower and lower on Deshaun Watson, where he might be a value, and I was listening to the CBS podcast with Jamie Eisenberg and Dave Richard and all of them. Jamie brought up an interesting point where, like, could you see Deshaun Watson this year just having like a Cam Newton type MVP year where he just puts the team on his back and just runs like crazy?
Absolutely,
Like
and
if he
especially if he
keeps
has.
falling, I'm gonna take him. I still have him as like my quarterback 6 or 7. Like I didn't move him as far as other people did.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just because he has that rushing upside, and sure, DeAndre Hopkins hurts, but they still have weapons in that offense, right? There's
Yeah,
still
like if they stay healthy, like Cook, Stills, David Johnson, and Will Fuller, like that's still like an above average, to average receiving group. Like David Johnson was bad as a runner last year; he was still good as a receiver.
All right, let's move it on. Tennessee Titans, 9-7, of course, made it all the way to the AFC Championship game last year before losing to the Kansas City Chiefs. Didn't really do much in terms of offense, but they did draft behemoth tackle Isaiah Wilson, 6'7", 350 pounds out of Georgia. Supposed to be very good in the running game. That's about it. Cole McDonald out of Hawaii as well in the 7th round. And, of course, Darrington Evans out of Appalachian State in the 3rd round. Do you have any thoughts on these guys? Does the addition of Wilson help the running game?
Yeah, I mean, I had to replace Jack Conklin, so I think the Darrington Evans is really interesting because Deion Lewis is a free agent. Not that he was used much anyway. Like if the game script and situation allows him to, Derrick Henry's going to get 20 carries every game. But say Tennessee takes a step back this year and they start playing from behind. Darrington Evans could be a thing. I would honestly draft him if I drafted Derrick Henry at the end of my draft because I think he's going to be the number 2 running back. And again, if something happens to Derrick Henry, this team is still under Mike Grable going to be, one of the run heaviest teams in the NFL. So I would definitely keep an eye on him.
That's a guy to watch if we do end up having OTAs or anything as a late round flyer or like one of your late rookie draft picks, right?
100%.
Not a lot here. Any other final thoughts on the Titans?
No, I mean they're a pretty interesting team because we expected I don't know if we expected it, but we thought there could be some changes this offseason. But Tannehill's back, Derrick Henry's back, so yeah. Unless you think Corey Davis is going to have another breakout season, or not another one, but if you once again think he will, then good luck with that.
All right. Indianapolis Colts, 7-9 last year, of course, made some major changes, added DeForest Buckner, added Phillip Rivers, 2 picks in the early 2nd round here that stand out. Michael Pittman out of USC, who just does not drop balls, one of my favorite kind of underrated picks of the entire draft, and I hope he does well. I'm curious to see where he lines up. There's a lot of fantasy implications here as well with him, and of course, their other 2nd round pick, Jonathan Taylor, running back out of Wisconsin. What are we doing with these guys? Maybe let's start with Pittman. Where does he fit into this wide receiving core that doesn't really have a lot of great top-end depth to it? Is he just automatically the wide receiver too?
I think he will be. Yeah, you mentioned his hands. Like he had a 3% drop rate. Just doesn't drop balls. And you add Phillip Rivers, who didn't play well last year, but they're going to be way more aggressive in terms of deep passing. Jacoby Brissett did not throw the ball deep last year. 5.3 air yards per completion, 2nd lowest rate in the NFL. Rivers will take more shots. I think Pittman slides in as the number 2 receiver. They'll probably have Paris Campbell in the slot. T.Y. will play in the slot a little bit. I definitely like Pittman. I wouldn't be shocked if he was like a top 5 rookie receiver this year. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he had a better statistical year than CeeDee Lamb just because there might be more targets available. And especially, T.Y. Hilton, wrong side of 30, missed, I think, 6 games last year. So, yeah, Pittman is definitely interesting. I could see Pittman as somebody. There were a couple of receivers drafted in the 2nd round that I think you can draft at the end of your traditional fantasy leagues. So I do like the spot for Pittman. I think it's really, really good.
I think you're right there, and you're going to see some competition with Zach Pascal, and who knows what Paris Campbell brings to the table. They took what was he a 2nd round pick, I believe, last year, so missed a lot of the season. So, and he's a speedster that would probably be more in line to compete with the likes of T.Y. Hilton or replace T.Y. Hilton should he get injured again. So, I kind of like the upside there for Pittman, and I do think that's a great point. Like he is viable as a late rounder in best balls or in your fantasy league. What about Jonathan Taylor? You usually do not draft a running back this high if you're planning to split them with your other running back. Is he basically the de facto number 1 running back ahead of Marlon Mack now, or how are they going to approach this?
I'm not even gonna. I will never sit here and pretend I know everything. I don't like for the future. It's obvious, right? Marlon Mack's going to be a UFA next year, so I'd be shocked if he was back this time next year. I bet Jonathan Taylor's a 2nd round pick in fantasy, but right now, Marlon Mack is an above average running back. He's He was really good last year when he was healthy. That's the problem. He's had some health issues in his career. But he averaged 18 carries per game, 7th overall in carries, despite missing a handful of games. This is going to be a run-first team behind that offensive line. The thing that's so enticing about Taylor is the fit with the offensive line and the running scheme is so good. Colts were top 5 in yards before contact, second-level yards. Like they just maul dudes up front. So, yeah, I think it's interesting because I would imagine at some point this year, Jonathan Taylor's leapfrogs Marlon Mack, but I don't know if it's the point where he's getting Marlon Mack's workload. Like Marlon Mack is still a good player for Dynasty. Like I honestly, if he stays healthy and has a promising year, and Marlon Mack doesn't return to the Colts next year, he'll probably be a second-round pick. Right now, he's obviously somebody you want to draft in the middle rounds and has all the potential in the world in this offense and behind this line. It's weird though. The Colts have a very, very mediocre to slightly above average, just offense, but they have a lot of dudes, right? They have Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Zach Pascal, Jack Doyle. They have a lot of dudes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. It's gonna be a lot of ball to go around there.
Yeah, if Taylor does manage to get Marlon Mack's workload and Marlon Mack gets phased out, he has legitimate top 10 upside and probably higher, just given the fit with the offensive line.
And where are you taking him in rookie drafts?
He's probably the 102.
Yeah. It's kind of what I'm thinking here. I think you could even make a case that he's the 101 from the long term,
yeah, definitely. Right? Because, like I said, if you told me right now, if Marlon Mack wasn't on the Colts right now and Jonathan Taylor was the Colts starting running back, I would have him ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, me too. Especially because you could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire just becoming more of a gadget back in the future. I don't know if he's going to be the kind of guy that handles a full workload. He might be, but whereas Taylor just fits the mold of a 3-down back, right?
Yeah, and just their Colts offensive line is so good. Quentin Nelson's
so good,
one of the best players in the league.
Left side of that line is just unbelievable, right?
Yeah, the fit is so good with Jonathan Taylor that I'm probably going to be drafting him very highly next year.
All right, final team in the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars. 6-10 last year. They are rebuilding. Went defense with their first 2 picks, CJ Henderson and Chason out of LSU. With their first second-round pick, though, they took a name that I like a lot. I think if I remember, you're kind of big on him too. Laviska Shenault Jr. out of Colorado has some really big upside here. Has battled injuries a lot throughout his collegiate career. That was probably the reason he slipped out of the first round. Colin Johnson, wide receiver out of Texas. That's about it in terms of fantasy viable guys. So tell me your takes on these. Let's just go straight to the important one. Shenault out of Colorado. What are you doing with him?
I really, really like Laviska Shenault this year. He wasn't somebody I was in love with coming out. I liked him, but this spot, I think Jacksonville is going to be potentially kind of what everybody thinks Carolina is going to be. Just defense is terrible, shootouts. I think the Jags are going to be once again returning to a bad defense and a lot of passing attempts. I know they added C.J. Anderson and Caleb on Chason, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to replace what they're losing. I really, really, really think Laviska Shenault is going to be the number 2 receiver in Jacksonville, a team that I think, especially with Jay Gruden as the offensive coordinator, he's been very pass heavy as a coordinator. Leonard Fournette didn't get traded, doesn't mean he still won't, or it doesn't look like he has a future. Shenault can get some carries too, that's part of his game. Really good after the catch, 7.4 yards after the catch per reception the last 2 years at Colorado. I think he could have a massive rookie season. Not anything he's not going to be a top 20 fantasy receiver or anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if he had as good of a year as some of these receivers that went ahead of him. I'm going to be drafting him at the end of a lot of my drafts because I'm really on board with this Jacksonville offense, not in terms of efficiency or anything. They're not going to be a top 10 scoring offense, but I just think, remember a couple years ago when Blake Bortles and Allen Robinson were just dominating garbage time. Now, Laviska Shenault's obviously not Allen Robinson, and he's not the number 1 on this team. That's DJ Shark. But I think there's a lot of potential here. I like the fit. I like the offense in terms of what they could be doing late in games. And, yeah, if Fournette isn't part of the team at some point, then I think they become even more pass-heavy.
This is like kind of a sneaky, not as terrible as people think they are team, I think. Like, especially if Gardner Minshew makes some strides in his second year. Like,
Yeah,
they've
it
got some
depends
guys who,
on what they get from Henderson and Chase on, I think, because like their secondary is just awful right now unless Henderson is a stud.
if he's good. Miles Jack, Josh Allen. I mean, it's not like they've got
Yeah,
no
Josh
players
Allen
on
was really
on
good
that
last
team.
year.
Yeah, and then of course the offensive line, like Cam Robinson, Andrew Norwell, it's not bad. But these wide receivers, you could see a scenario where Chenault is basically just like the number 2 guy behind Shark pretty quickly.
Yeah,
I don't think.
I like Minshew a lot for fantasy this year because he runs, and I think they're going to be playing from behind. But if Jameis Winston was a starting quarterback instead of, I know he just signed with New
Oof.
Orleans, but that would have made it like DJ Shark probably would have went to like top 15 receiver. I wanted that to happen so bad, and now Jameis is going to be. Could you have more polar opposite passers than Drew Brees and Jameis Winston?
It's going to be interesting, man. Maybe he takes over or Breeze retires. Who knows?
Nah, Taysom Hill's getting paid $10 million to throw a pass a game. So
That's true. That's true. There's not a lot of money to go around. All right, moving it on. In the AFC North, we got the Ravens, who disappointed in the playoffs last year, but I think had a great draft. One of my favorite drafts.
yeah,
I've seen some criticism about the draft from like Josh Hermsmeyer, who I really respect. He's a smart guy. Just saying that they didn't really take advantage of important positions. If you think about it, like the players they got were great and great values, but also like you're drafting a linebacker, running back, defensive tackle, inside linebacker with your first picks that those aren't necessarily great positions that are important. So you can see the counter argument to that. But let's get into some of these picks. We will ignore their first round pick, Patrick Queen, the linebacker. But for the offense, they got J.K. Dobbins out of Ohio State in the second round. They got Duvernay out of Texas, who could be a really sneaky pick up. Maybe he's not sneaky at all, but and people will be on to him. But also James Proche out of SMU. All those guys, like there's room to stand out in this Ravens offense. I don't know if either of these wide receivers will be able to do that, but you have to figure that if one of them can solidify a spot, they could be catching balls ahead of the likes of Willie Snead or Miles Boykin, right?
Yeah, I mean, this team just didn't throw to the receivers last year. Tight ends were obviously the focal point. Mark Andrews had one of the highest target shares in the league. So, like, yeah, I mean, one of these guys could step in. The problem is, like, team called run at the highest rate in the NFL, 54%. Lamar Jackson's running 10, 11 times a game probably. And then you add J.K. Dobbins into the mix, where I originally wasn't a fan of this spot for him, but then I looked more into it, and so despite being on the run heaviest team in the NFL, Mark Ingram only averaged 13 carries a game, never reached the 20 carry mark. A lot of that is because Lamar Jackson's running a lot, but it was also designed. Like they gave Gus Edwards like 7-8 carries a game. So if Dobbins gets Gus Edwards' role, like he's going to be not just he's not just going to be one of the best handcuffs in fantasy, but he could have some standalone value in deeper leagues. So like if you draft Ingram, like try to get Dobbins, but even if you don't, Dobbins is a mid-round pick that has league-winning upside if anything happens to Ingram, who had the calf injury, I think, down the stretch last year. So, yeah, I think Lamar Jackson obviously is due for some regression, but they're not going to change their offense. And I understand you want him to be healthy, but he's not just going to stop running. So that's going to take away from some carries, but it's also designed that Mark Ingram was not getting a huge workload. So they did tender Gus Edwards in the offseason. They like him. But if Dobbins, it's still a second-round pick on a running back here when they have, Ingram, who's older, and I think he's a free agent in a couple of years, and then, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. So Dobbins is a guy that I originally wasn't crazy about, but now I'm starting to warm up to and probably has massive league-winning upside.
R.I.P. Justice Hill.
Yeah. I mean, not much you can do. It hasn't been bad. It's just there's only so many carries to go around, and especially when – that's the thing. Like, Lamar Jackson just literally – and nobody cares because it's, like, probably the most fun thing to watch in the NFL right now is him run. But he's literally taking 10, 11 carries a game from these running backs. Geno
Stone in the 7th round. My God, they had a good draft. I can't get over it. I don't care
Patrick
about
Queen
points.
too.
And Patrick Queen. You have to,
Patrick Queen pick.
Like, even if you take their lack of positional importance into account, they're just stacked at every other position, so it doesn't really matter.
Their D-line is going to have – like, they added Calais Campbell in the offseason. Like, Brandon Williams. Like, they're gonna destroy the run game. Like, you're not going to be able to run against them. The secondary is obviously loaded with, Peters and Humphrey. Like, they're going to be – I mean, they're probably Super Bowl favorites other than maybe the Chiefs, right? Like, it's got to be those two.
Let's just fast forward to the AFC Championship game. I'm ready. All right. The
By the way,
Rockos.
love being a Bills fan where we finally get rid of Brady, but then Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson are still in the AFC for the next, and they're all young as hell.
And you
So
got to deal with Tua,
yeah, we'll
possibly.
see. I mean, Miami had we'll talk about them, but it's kind of hard to have a bad draft when you have 38 picks.
This is also true. All right, Steelers taking Chase Claypool in the second round from my hometown of Vancouver, BC, just a little outside of Vancouver, BC. So got to give a little shout out to Chase. That's pretty much it. Anthony McFarland Jr. in the fourth round as well. I don't know. Let's talk about Claypool first. I heard today he's going to line up on the outside. Is this is he one of the best spots out of any of the young or any of the first two round receivers?
It's weird because 6'4", 238, he's a monster. I think he crushes like if you had any hope for Eric Ebron or Vance McDonald. But he's interesting because he's so different from the other receivers. Like him and Deontay Johnson are huge polar opposites. Juju's not exactly small, but he's going to play in the slot. I don't know. I think he's somebody to kind of definitely keep your eye on. I don't know if you have to draft him per se. But he definitely helps Big Ben, gives him a big target. Big Ben is somebody I'm starting to get more and more interested in because, we'll see with Claypool, but I like Deontay Johnson a lot. Juju's obviously a stud when he's healthy. I don't care what people say about him not being a true number one. The guy was hurt last year, and he was catching passes from the two worst quarterbacks in the NFL, probably.
Yeah. This is a sneaky team to get on early on in best ball drafts, right?
They're a sneaky team to compete too. Their defense was great last year. Minkah was incredible. They have Watt, who is legitimately one of the better young defensive players in the league. And then you get Juju back, and you get Big Ben back. They could definitely make some noise. I think James Conner is a massive winner that they didn't draft one of these running backs that they said they did. They did add McFarland, who I guess is somebody to maybe keep an eye on, but they already pretty much came out and said they're not going to extend James Conner after this year.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just run him into the ground? So James Conner is somebody I moved up exponentially. I originally had him as a bust, and I kind of switched my tune because I thought they would draft a running back with a second or third round pick, and they didn't.
It's certainly hard to see Anthony McFarland getting ahead of Benny Snell, and Jalen Samuels is used as a kind of Swiss Army knife.
Yeah,
in
they
this
like
offense,
Benny Snell too.
Yeah. So kind of tough to see him unless you get a really, really deep dynasty league. All right, that's doing it for the Steelers. How about the Cleveland Browns? They finished 6-10 last year. Of course, disappointing. Is this like a post-hype sleeper team? They went Jedrick Willis, kind of slipped to him at number 10, offensive tackle. I think Jedrick Wills. A lot of people thought he would go to the Giants at number 4. What else? Who else did they get here? Harrison Bryant as well, tight end. And then, of course, Donovan Peoples-Jones, one of the more polarizing wide receivers in this draft. Some people absolutely love him. Some people aren't as high on him. What are your takeaways for the Browns draft and how this affects their fantasy outlook?
Yeah, so I found out the day of the draft that my mom works with Donovan Peoples-Jones' mom, so that was kind of cool.
Wow, there you go.
So just all of a sudden now I'm just rooting for him. I'm just glad he got drafted. Yeah, I think Cleveland, Baker Mayfield, has a lot of post-hype sleeper potential. Not only do they add Jedrick Wills, but they add Jack Conklin. You add Austin Hooper. The last 2 off seasons, you've added Odell Beckham, Jack Conklin, Austin Hooper, Jedrick Wills, and you finally have what we hope to be is a competent offensive system with Freddie Kitchens gone, who just didn't know what to do and didn't. That's the annoying thing, right? He clearly didn't know what he was doing, but he didn't have the presence of mind to just stop. He didn't hand over play calling duties. That's what pissed me off. But yeah, I'm kind of in on Baker. As I don't think Baker is as bad as he was last year. The system's better where they have, and Kareem Hunt also you added last year. So they just added a bunch of dudes to help Baker. If I miss on, I don't know, because you're gonna have to take Lamar Jackson or Mahomes or Dak early. If I miss on them and I miss on Brady or Stafford, I'll probably be looking at Baker. I think a lot of post-type sleeper potential for him. I still think Odell Beckham's one of the most talented players in the league. Jarvis Landry had a really good year last year. And now you not only have Austin Hooper, but you have David Njoku as well. They're probably going to keep using 2 tight end sets with Kevin Stefanski there, who did in Minnesota. They have a lot of weapons.
Massive improvements on the offensive line as well. Assuming Wills is good, they add Conklin, decent interior line as well. What do you think about Peoples-Jones here? Because the third wide receiver is there's not a lot of talent there. You got Taywan Taylor, Damian Ratley. Like I could easily see him moving up the charts pretty quickly in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, maybe somebody to square away. There's rumors every day seemingly about Odell getting traded. I don't really buy it, but
no.
If that happens, then I mean,
it would have happened already.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I just think there's going to be a lot more two tight end sets that would kind of hurt somebody like that, where they don't need a third receiver so much. Like they could just have Landry, Odell, and Njoku and Austin Hooper, and they'll be fine. And Kareem Hunt caught the ball of the backfield really well. So yeah, I mean, this Baker should be able to have, I don't want to say a monster year, but I wouldn't be surprised because I still think Baker is a really, really, really good talent. And, as bad as he was, a lot of that was Freddie Kitchens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing, right? Now that you have a possible decent offensive coordinator there, it might make a big difference, though. Who knows if they're going to go run heavy or not. Let's finish it off with the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, they took Joe Burrow, number 1 overall in the draft, and then followed that up with the first pick. They just kept their pick every single round, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the most Bengals draft ever. T. Higgins out of Clemson in the second round. Interesting. A place for him to land here because there is a lot of wide receiver depth in Cincinnati. You got A.J. Bourne, you got Taylor Boyd, you got Auden Tate who emerged, and of course John Ross actually had some good games last year, even though he was injured. So let's talk about like just the whole Cincinnati offense with Joe Burrow, and then where does T. Higgins fit into it?
Yeah, Joe Burrow's tough for me because you obviously love the talent, one of the best quarterbacks to come out probably since Andrew Luck. And the offense, I mean, they have a ton of weapons. Like you mentioned, A.J. Green will be back. Jonah Williams didn't play all last year on the offensive line. They'll get him back. Tyler Boyd's been really good the last 2 years. Joe Mixon's really good. So Burrow, for me, like you don't need to draft him probably in traditional, one quarterback leagues, but he's like an ideal candidate for super flex leagues and 2 QB leagues because like I would be fine. Because I'm the type of guy in 2 quarterback leagues where like I'll get like a stud and then I'll wait and get like a Joe Burrow or somebody. I think he fits perfectly if you want to still get those running backs and receivers. But it's just kind of hard for me to rank him right now because there's so many other quarterbacks I like. But in terms of like the future, I think it's really telling that they spent their second pick on T. Higgins. A.J. Green on the franchise tag, he's a UFA next year. I'd be surprised if he came back. There is a shot that T. Higgins is the number 1 receiver alongside Joe Burrow. You draft them together in the same class. And I think I read that these guys have been working out together in the offseason. So I'm for Dynasty, I really like T. Higgins. I loved him coming out. I think he's really interesting. I don't know if it's going to happen for redraft unless AJ Green misses time again. But in Dynasty, like this time next year, T. Higgins could be the starting outside receiver for the Bengals, who should be an improved offense.
6'4", 216, has great speed, great ADOT. Yeah, you could definitely see this becoming a thing. And I think one of the more underrated rookie redraft picks that you could make right now.
Where do you think he would have been drafted on last Thursday if he participated at the combine?
I don't know. Like I saw his name just in like the late first round the entire time.
Yeah,
so I would assume
before the Bills traded for Stephon Diggs, this is who I wanted.
Yeah.
Very, very badly.
Yeah, like, and maybe like right after Jefferson would kind of be my thinking, but
yeah.
Or maybe ahead of like where Rager goes.
Then again, I thought Denzel Mims would have been a late first round pick too. So
yeah, it might even just speak to the depth of this draft that he fell out of the first round, but steal there for them. So, all right, that's going to do it for the AFC North, our final division. We are going to kick it off with the 12-4 New England Patriots, who are just an absolute mess right now. Didn't really like their draft. I did love the Josh Uche pick at the 20th pick of the second round. I think he's got some serious upside, but they didn't really do much. I don't think we need to spend too much time talking about them. 2 tight ends, one out of UCLA, whose name I'm going to butcher, Devin Asiasi, Dalton Keene. Did I say that right? Devin Asiasi.
I think you did.
Wow. It's just a miracle. Do you like anything here? Is there anything we need to talk about?
I mean, there's going to be opportunity for one of those tight ends, I guess, but is it going to be something we target with, looks like Jarrett Stidham throwing passes? Like they literally, I think, came out and said they're not interested in Cam Newton. So that pretty much leaves them with the trade of Andy Dalton or something, which I think would have happened by now. So Jarrett Stidham's probably going to be the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots, and I would be legitimately shocked. I know everybody has a certain point where they're a value in drafts, but like at the moment, I'd be pretty surprised if I had a New England Patriot on my team.
It's pretty ugly right there. Let's move it on
It's so weird.
I just I have want no part of this offense. So I don't know. Maybe Edelman will be someone that slips in drafts and in PPRs.
Yeah,
He could be like a safety blanket.
Like in all technicality, like Julian Edelman should have like a 28% target share, but might score like 3 touchdowns.
God, it's ugly. Who knows? Maybe Cam will end up there, but I'm just your team, the Buffalo Bills, 10-6. Take it away. Talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to the Super Bowl pretty clearly. No, it's weird because this is the first time because I wasn't really, I'm only 27. So, like, the 4 straight Super Bowls, I wasn't really live for much of it. But this is the most excited I've been as a Bills fan, the highest expectations I've ever had. So, it's weird that everybody's expecting the Bills to do well. It's weird. But, yeah, I mean, they obviously didn't have a first-round pick because they used it to acquire Stephon Diggs. So, he was essentially their first-round pick. But, yeah, like, Brandon Beane is a star. I mean, they were apparently they wanted AJ Epinesa, like, in the first round before the Diggs trade. And then they trade their first-round pick and still get their guy at 54. So, yeah, and then they draft Zach Moss. I've seen a lot of people freaking out about Devin Singletary. And maybe I'm a homer. I don't know. But I'm kind of not. Like, I moved him down like a couple spots just because also that was more because James Conner moved up and other guys moved up. Clyde Edwards-Helaire moved up. But, Brandon Beane came out and said that Devin Singletary, is going to be the first guy in the game on third downs, which, Josh Allen doesn't throw to his running backs a ton, but he's obviously going to be, if there is a pass catching back on this team, it's going to be him. Mm-hmm. And then, Frank Gore is gone. Devin Singletary had 1 goal line carry last year. But despite not getting goal line work, he was still the RB20 in the second half of the season, over 15 touches per game, 11th in rushing yards, 5th in avoided tackles. Like, he was really good from week 8 on. So, yeah, Josh Allen's going to steal touchdowns, and maybe Zach Moss is the goal line back, but he already wasn't the goal line back last year. You're telling me I don't think he's going to have less than 1 goal line carry. Like, he's probably going to have more, and he's still, in my opinion, the 1A in a run-first offense, and an offense that's going to be better this year with Stephon Diggs. Like, I'm probably going to take Singletary if he keeps falling because I think after what he did in the second half, you don't take like Zach Moss. They needed a running back. Frank Gore was a free agent. TJ Yeldon's not the guy, and they don't really have any depth. So I think Zach Moss is going to get – and that's the other thing. Like, he was, I think, the RB, 30-something on the season, and he wasn't even a full-time player until the Redskins game in week 8, and he was hurt for the first half of the year. So I think he still gets 15 touches a game, and I think people are freaking out a little prematurely. I understand Zach Moss being there hurts his overall upside because I don't think Singletary is going to be a guy that scores 8-9 rushing touchdowns, but I still think he's a really good player and a good offense that wants to run the ball. So I think Zach Moss is somebody you definitely take in drafts late because he could be the goal line back, and Singletary does get hurt. Zach Moss is getting all the touches, but I think I'm a little bit higher in Singletary than most people right now.
All right, makes sense. Love the Epinesa pick too. That was a steal in the late second round, eh?
Yeah, Brandon Beane, man, dude's a wizard.
I love it. All right, now if Josh Allen can learn how to throw a football, then you guys are good to go.
Oh man, I hate Twitter.
All right, let's move it on to your division rivals, the New York Jets, who shocked a few people with Mekhi Becton at the 11th pick overall. Physical specimen, 6'7", 365 pounds, has all the raw tools to succeed, but might be a little bit raw to step in. Denzel Mims falls all the way to the end of the second round for them, which was, I thought, a bit of a steal there. And then not really much else in terms of viable fantasy options. So does Mekhi Becton move the needle at all in this run game and pass protection for Sam Bradford? And where are we drafting Denzel Mims?
Yeah, I thought the Jets had a pretty solid draft. The problem is it's Adam Gase still, who is just the worst. They brought in Rashad Perriman to replace Robbie Anderson. They also bring in Denzel Mims. So you have kind of the two of the downfield threats to pair with Jamison Crowder across the middle. I don't know. The Jets really still don't do it for me. I mean, they're finally starting to build around Sam Darnold, which is nice to see. I don't know. Crowder looked like a winner after the first night because I thought the Jets could have drafted a receiver with that Becton pick. They didn't. Mims kind of just fell to him. Like, Mims shouldn't have gone that far. So I thought that was a good pick by them for their offense. But yeah, I mean, Perriman was obviously great down the stretch, but that was solely due to the offense and the fact that Chris Godwin and Mike Evans were both hurt. So I don't think he's somebody I'm looking at. Mims may be late just because I really love the talent. But yeah, I don't know. Le'Veon Bell, maybe just because people will be sick of him. And that's the other thing. Like, Adam Gase clearly doesn't want Le'Veon Bell on the team. So, like, who's to say he just doesn't stop giving him work? I don't know. Maybe that's bad analysis, but
It's tough to get excited about a Gase offense, isn't it?
yeah, the Jets had a good draft, in my opinion, but they're also still just probably one of the 3 teams in the league or 3 or 4 teams in the league where I just don't love anybody for fantasy.
There's going to be, if they can improve their offensive line, though, I mean, the Gase factor you mentioned, but there's going to be some targets up for grabs here. Like, I don't know, Robbie Anderson doesn't have a ton of targets, but, like, where is
they
this
don't use their tight ends. Like,
yeah, unless Chris Herndon comes back and, like, actually does something.
Hurt.
But
he was hurt and suspended, and
like,
he was a popular sleeper this offseason, and then he just couldn't get on the field.
Yeah, and suspended for 5 games or whatever. But there's some, like, someone could emerge from this. It's the kind of team where you should be looking at later in and being like,
I could see Crowder catching like 85 balls.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's like, it's not going to be a ton of yardage, but still, it's something where you're going to get him. He may end up being a bargain. All right. Any? And Bryce Hall as well in this 5th round they got him. That was such a steal.
I wanted the Bills to draft him.
it was a good pick for sure. Okay, let's finish things off in the AFC with the Miami Dolphins. Of course, they draft Tua at I'm drawing a blank, 5th overall pick. And then they followed that up with Austin Jackson, tackle out of USC, Robert Hunt, guard out of Louisiana. So they really addressed their offensive line issues. Not a lot of skill positions, though, for Tua. What does he do to this team? Are you upping your grades on any of these Miami wide receivers or Matt Breida, who they traded for? Just talk generally about what the Miami Dolphins offense is going to look like this season.
I mean, you would expect Tua would start, right? But there's still a potential chance that he opens the season on the bench. Just, if they want to give him one more year, then just kind of go full on 2021 with him. But I would imagine he's at quarterback for him at some point. Definite upgrade over Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick was a QB1 down the stretch last year, but again, it was mainly due to them having no running game and trailing a ton. Now, Miami, they had a great offseason. They had a ton of guys. I mean, Byron Jones to pair with Xavier Howard, Shaq Lawson. Like, they added a bunch of dudes. I think they added Kyle Van Noy too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they should be better. Do I think they're going to be like 7-8 wins? Maybe that's their ceiling. So I don't think they'll be chasing points as much, which isn't great for the offense. Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, though, like, they added no pass catchers. Other than Matt Breida, really. So those guys are kind of locked in for me being Gesicki, I think, is getting close, dangerously close to being like a top 12 tight end for me. Devontae Parker, it would be so fitting for him to just have a terrible year next year after just him trolling us for offseason after offseason. But he looked like just a different player last year, and there should be an upgraded quarterback. And then, Jordan Howard was a winner for like the first couple nights of the draft, and then day 3 comes and Matt Breida gets traded for a 5th round pick. I don't think he's a winner anymore. I also don't think he's a loser from this. Like, I talked about this on my podcast I did with TJ Hernandez. I could see these guys being used very similarly to how the Eagles running backs were used with Howard and Miles Sanders last year. And that was, I think, 13 carries per game for Howard and 11 for Sanders. And Sanders would be the Breida. Obviously, Breida would get all the passing work because he's just way better in that regard. So I think they're both top 35 backs, close to that 32, 33 range for me. But they'll both have flex value, and if one goes down, then because they didn't draft any running backs really, the other guy would definitely benefit.
Does my other post-hype sleeper Albert Wilson have any hope of becoming the guy I thought he would be this year?
I mean, another guy that, like, when he's on the field, he just scores touchdowns from like 50 yards out all the time. But I mean,
no,
it depends what Preston Williams, because Preston Williams is really good when he played last year.
Yeah,
or his ACL, I think he'll be back.
UDFA, right?
Yeah, and he was among the most targeted red zone guys in the league before he got hurt. So, I mean, you got some big dudes with Gesicki, Parker, and Preston Williams for the red zone for Tua. I think Tua is another guy that's kind of in that 2 QB range for me, more of a dynasty guy to look to. But, clearly they draft him and they follow with some offensive line upgrades. So the Dolphins offseason's it's definitely been good. So they'll be interesting to see this year because you have a lot of teams that like were terrible or boring to watch last year, but now they're going to be fun. I mean,
That
Colts, Broncos, Dolphins, like.
that was my biggest takeaway from this draft is like there are a lot more fun teams to watch. I mean, the Browns will be more fun. The Bengals, like you mentioned, a couple of guys, like the Colts are going to be more fun. And yeah, the Broncos,
I
the
think the
Raiders, like
Chargers too,
there's the
regardless, because like
Chargers.
even if Justin Herbert doesn't play, this will be the first time in like 20 years where the Chargers have a mobile quarterback.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how one draft can just kind of make the NFL a lot more exciting. It's the most I've ever come out of a draft and gone like, wait, there are a lot more teams that I want to
Yeah.
watch next season that are going to be appointment viewing. So, any final thoughts? That's going to do it for the AFC. Of course, we will be back with the NFC preview tomorrow. But first off, give me your top 3 AFC draft winners and your biggest loser out of the AFC.
It's hard not to like what the Dolphins did just by the default. So I definitely would put the Dolphins up there. I mean, I definitely like the Bengals draft. Again, another team where, you get the best player in the draft. You have the first pick. It's hard to mess up. Denver definitely has to be up there. I would put those 3, and I would add Baltimore. I think they had really good drafts.
I think I am in absolute agreement with you. And my worst draft would probably be the Houston Texans, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and I would still pick the Packers in the AFC as the worst
Oh,
draft.
of
That's
course,
how
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Even in the AFC, I'll pick them.
I like it. They get worse draft for both. All right, that's going to do it for us here. Adam, thanks so much for joining us as well. You can find all of Adam's content on at Osmo.com, where he's done the draft analysis as the picks were happening, and then the post draft rankings. You got anything going on over a Roto Curve as well?
Just occasional podcasts here and there. I did, I started a little thing when this quarantine started to just have some people from the industry on talk about their stories and stuff like that, and why and how fantasy sports has impacted them. Because I talked about it before, where just I have anxiety, and sports in general and fantasy sports are a really big coping mechanism for me. So not having has been tough, but yeah, that's why I love writing. And so I'm trying to have people on and talk about, what sports and stuff like that's meant to them. So trying to get back into that, but the draft kind of put that on hiatus for now.
Yeah, makes sense. It's great stuff you're doing over there. And of course, you can follow Adam Pfeifer at Pfeifer24 over on Twitter. So go do that right now, and we will catch you back tomorrow with the NFC breakdown from the 2020 NFL Draft. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.